There's an observation that's become increasingly hard to ignore when you compare Disney and Studio Ghibli over the past few decades. Ghibli has been consistently praised for the quality and depth of its female characters. Disney, on the other hand, has accumulated criticism, sometimes spectacularly, with the most recent and glaring example being Asha in Wish. And the question that naturally follows is, why? What actually makes a female character genuinely well written? What is Ghibli consistently doing right that Disney so often gets wrong? And what does all of this say about the way we represent women in fiction more broadly? That's exactly what we are going to dig into today. We will go deep on character development, complexity, how bodies and femininity get represented on screen, and the test that concretely measures whether a film actually treats its female characters as full human beings. By the end, I will give you what I consider the single most important criterion for writing a truly great female character. Let's start with the foundation: character development. A character who doesn't evolve is a character who isn't alive. And this is where Miyazaki operates on an entirely different level. Take Chihiro in Spirited Away. At the start of the film, she's a completely ordinary kid. Whiny, scared of everything, dragging her feet about, moving to a new town. And then, as the story unfolds, something happens. Not dramatically, not through a big revelatory monologue or a musical transformation sequence. It happens quietly, in the margins, through the accumulation of experiences she lives through. She develops a resilience and a courage that are genuinely impressive. And what makes this transformation so powerful is how real it feels. We watch her face her fears. We watch her stumble. We watch her get back up. Chihiro doesn't start as a hero. She becomes one through actual lived experience. And that's exactly why she won the community's Ghibli character tournament. You could say the same about Sen in Princess Mononoke, who moves from an absolute hatred of humans toward a slow, painful, but genuine understanding that not all of them are her enemies. Or Sophie in Howl's Moving Castle, who starts as a timid young woman loaded with insecurities and ends the film radiating a confidence that nobody gave her. She earned it herself. Disney, in recent years, has fallen into the opposite trap. The studio wanted to correct its old cliches of passive princesses by creating heroines who are already strong from the very first scene. The intention is understandable, but the result creates a serious narrative problem. If your character starts at the top, where does she have left to go? Asha in Wish is the most obvious example. She is defined by her optimism from the opening minutes, and she remains fundamentally the same person from beginning to end. Optimism is not a flaw in itself, but a character without an arc, without fragility, without a single moment where she genuinely doubts herself, is a character you watch without ever really accompanying. Even Elsa in Frozen, who does go through a real emotional transformation, ends up resolving her internal conflict in a way that feels a little too easy, a little too fast. Her vulnerability is there, but it functions more as a plot device than as a deeply explored psychological trait. The second major pillar of a strong female character is relatability. It is the ability of the audience to genuinely see themselves in her. This is another area where Ghibli consistently excels, and it is worth examining. Sophie in Howl's Moving Castle is the perfect example of what I would call the extraordinary made ordinary. Everything in her initial design is intentionally unremarkable. A plain appearance, a quiet personality, a rigorous work ethic with no particular flair. It is precisely these traits that make her refreshing, and therefore remarkable. She is not a great leader. She is not dazzlingly charismatic. She is not strikingly beautiful. She is just an ordinary girl, and that is exactly why so many people recognize themselves in her instantly. Kiki. In Kiki's Delivery Service follows the same logic. This young witch learning to navigate independence and self-doubt could be any teenager leaving home for the first time. Her struggles with burnout and lost confidence are universal themes. What is particularly intelligent about her story is that she is not trying to save the world. She is trying to find her place in it. That more modest frame makes her journey surprisingly more touching and more intimate. Disney isn't without successful examples at this level either. Tiana in The Princess and the Frog embodies something very real. A young woman from a modest background with a precise dream of opening her own restaurant, who earns her way toward it through genuine hard work, multiple jobs, and real sacrifice. It's not a gift. It's not magic falling from the sky. It's earned effort. And audiences feel that. Now let us talk about something we cannot avoid when analyzing female characters in animation, and in anime specifically. That topic is sexualization. On this point, Ghibli does something that has become almost revolutionary within the Japanese animation landscape. In the anime industry, the concept of fan service has become nearly unavoidable. Fan service means sequences designed mainly to provide visually suggestive content to the audience, and in most cases, that content is aimed at a heterosexual male viewership. Female characters are often drawn with unrealistic proportions, dressed to maximize physical exposure, and framed in ways that draw attention to their bodies rather than their personalities or their actions. Ghibli flatly refuses this approach. San in Princess Mononoke is dressed practically, in clothes appropriate to her life in the forest. Sophie in Howl's Moving Castle is never defined by her physical appearance. Her role in the story has nothing to do with how she is looked at. This is true for virtually every female character in the studio's catalog. They embody strength through their personality, their choices, and their actions, not through their bodies. Disney has made real progress here since its earlier decades. Jasmine and Ariel were characters whose framing often centered on their physical appearance and their romantic desire as their primary defining features. More recent films have moved away from those cliches, but traces remain. A lingering emphasis on external beauty, a certain centrality of princess-like qualities that still sometimes defines the register in which these characters operate. There is another pitfall that deserves to be named directly because it has emerged as a real pattern in some of Disney's more recent productions. Wanting to show strong female characters is a good intention, but some films have pushed that so far that the characters ended up losing all their complexity, all their vulnerability, and along the way, all their femininity. Strength and femininity are not mutually exclusive. A woman can be courageous, independent, and driven, and also be sensitive, vulnerable, and romantic. These traits do not contradict each other. They coexist in real people all the time. When a fictional female character is constructed as a strength machine, without nuance, without moments of genuine doubt, without any emotional or romantic life, the result is a character who might inspire on the surface, but never truly moves you. There is also a related reduction that has crept into certain recent narratives. The idea is that for a heroine to be credible, she cannot need men, she cannot have a romance, she cannot pursue love, as if romance were by definition incompatible with female strength. That is a false equation. In plenty of male-led action and adventure films, the hero saves the world and gets the girl. Those two things are never considered contradictory. So why would they be for a heroine? What Ghibli achieves, and this might be its most valuable contribution to animated cinema, is showing female characters who get to have both. Chihiro grows through her own story and maintains a deep bond with Haku. Sophie builds her self-confidence and falls in love with Howl. Both dimensions coexist naturally, because that is how real life actually works. Romance does not erase a personal arc. A personal arc does not erase romance. And now let's get to what I consider the single most important criterion for evaluating the writing of a female character: depth and complexity. This is where the gap between the two studios is most dramatic. Nausicaa in Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind is a remarkable example. She is not just a courageous warrior. She is also deeply empathetic, environmentally conscious, and ideologically committed to pacifism. Her strengths and her fragilities are interwoven in a way that creates a coherent, complete character. She leads her people, but it is her compassion for nature and for every living thing around her that truly drives her heroism. This combination of strength and emotional depth is something you rarely find in traditional Disney heroines. Ariel offers an instructive counterpoint. She has a curiosity and a rebelliousness that make her genuinely likable. But her narrative arc is primarily driven by an external desire, being with Eric. She is more reactive than proactive. And even if you love her, and plenty of people do, her journey feels limited compared to Ghibli heroines, whose personal ambitions and emotional arcs are woven into something much larger. There is a concrete tool that measures whether a film actually treats its female characters as individuals in their own right. It is called the Bechdel test. It asks 3 simple questions. Does the film have at least 2 named female characters? Do those 2 characters talk to each other at some point? And does their conversation cover something other than a man? These 3 criteria seem basic, and yet, out of 57 Disney animated features, 30 of them fail this test. 30. That is more than half. And that says something pretty eloquent about how female characters are often reduced to existing in relation to the male characters around them. Ghibli characters, on the other hand, are almost systematically involved in interactions between women that center on real stakes, personal growth, the relationship with nature, community, and survival. These conversations exist because these characters have inner lives that do not depend on the presence of a male character to have meaning. Mulan deserves a special mention in the Disney catalog because she represents the clearest example of what the studio can do when it is truly committed. Mulan breaks the laws of her country to save her injured father, and she disguises herself as a man to fight in an army that would have killed her if she had been discovered. She is not just a courageous heroine. She shows genuine vulnerability at the start of the film, real insecurity in the face of her family's and society's expectations. And she ends up saving all of China, while also having a genuine romantic life with General Li Shang. Both things coexist. That is exactly what we are asking for. So does any of this actually matter? Does it change anything to critique films we otherwise love? I think it does, deeply, because you can appreciate a character despite the limitations of the writing. You can love Ariel while recognizing that her arc could have been so much richer. You can be moved by Elsa while noting that her emotional resolution arrives too easily. And acknowledging those limitations is not a betrayal of those characters. It is hoping for something better, for them and for the characters who come after them. Disney has made real progress. That deserves honest acknowledgement. But the emotional depth and organic growth of Ghibli's female characters remain a difficult standard to reach. Chihiro, Nausicaa, Kiki, these characters evolve through their flaws, their struggles, and their triumphs in a way that makes them genuinely human. If Disney wants to create heroines who resonate as powerfully and as lastingly, the path forward is not more surface-level empowerment. It is more internal complexity, more genuinely earned vulnerability, more growth that comes through pain and doubt. Characters who can be strong and in love, courageous and terrified, independent and deeply connected to others. Because a great female character, like any great character, isn't defined by who she is at the start. She's defined by who she becomes. And the journey between those 2 points is always the most interesting part of the story to tell. So tell me in the comments, which female animated character has stayed with you the most, Disney or Ghibli, and why? And do you think animated films have a real responsibility in the way they represent women? I read everything, and I think this conversation can go a very long way.